Hi, I'm Ricardo, and welcome to another episode of the Force for Growth podcast.
Hello, I'm Courtney. Thank you for joining us. And today we're going to be discussing comparing yourself to yourself. So let's get started. This one's going to be good.
Comparing yourself to yourself, Courtney. We talk a lot, and we've talked a lot about comparing yourself to others,
hmm
comparing yourself to others on social media, in real life, in the virtual social media world. But what? Comparing yourself to yourself?
Yeah. It's that it's like this taboo thing. Like, is that healthy? Is that unhealthy? Like, it's such an awkward thing these days, and kind of this weird society we live in. But we break it down for us, or break it down why you wanted to bring up this thought series.
So apparently, this is something that I have been struggling with without me really knowing what it was. That's the bottom line. Let me break it down. So, growing up, I used to just have, I worked. I mean, I would put in 12, 18, 20-hour days, right? Just going, 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 working two, three, four jobs, going from one thing to the other, to the other, to the other, and just doing it because I felt like I had to, because I wanted growth. I wanted financial growth in that space. So I would never turn a job down. I would always just do whatever had to be done, regardless of how I felt physically. And I would just push through and get it done.
Mm,
And that was me in my 20s through my 30s. Now I'm finding myself that I don't necessarily have to do that. I don't have to work as hard as I used to at that extent, at that extreme. I
mm,
can work smarter and still put in a good 8, 10 hour day and still get that much done. But it's a different kind of grind, it's a different kind of hustle. And it feels different internally in my body and in my mind.
mhm,
However, the thing that was happening with me was that I continued to compare myself to my 20 and 30-year-old self, thinking that that's what it had to feel like in order to be successful, or to, my definition of putting in a hard day's work is 15, 20 hours nonstop and just going and knocking this out and doing this and doing that.
mhm.
And the truth is I don't really have to do that anymore because that's not where I am in this current phase of my life.
I think that's a magnificent observation. And you're not saying you never will have another 18, 20-hour day. Let's call it
No,
what it is,
correct.
but it's just saying that is not the norm you need to function within to go to bed proud of yourself. Because that's really the
That's
feeling we're
it.
getting out. That is a feel. It's not, guys, like everything we're after, everything Ricardo's after, everything I'm after, it's not technically the thing that we're after. It's the feeling we're going to finally allow ourselves to feel when we get there, right? Any personal development program talks about this. So if you can just observe, we're not asking you to like gauge it and to, completely diagnose yourself. And you're not really the best one to diagnose yourself in those type things. But if you could just step back and observe, is the pattern I'm in serving me? Is the pattern I used to have serve me better? Does it, do I need to upgrade my pattern? And I think that's what I hear whenever you were talking, Ricardo, is just that I think you are upgrading it. And it's not, it's, it's kind of automation. Like there's certain things that you had to work really hard at to achieve. Well, now that's in you. That's within you. That's a part of you.
Correct.
It's what you do. So now, knowing you, knowing the type of high achievers we strive to be, you're never going to stop there. So
And it's
it's,
just really reflecting on yourself, right?
yeah.
Because one of the analogies that I love is comes from Tony Robbins. He talks about the astronauts that go into space. They go into space and they come back to Earth and they're depressed
hmm
because they went to space.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
they literally went out of this world. Literally.
How are you going to top that?
How are you going to top that? So they get depressed. Why? Because they can't ever achieve that greater of success. Let me rephrase that. They think or believe that they can never achieve that level of success on earth.
hmm
So if their rule is, well, I have to go to space in order to be accomplished,
That's a
Oh,
hard rule
oh,
book. That
it's
is a
tough.
hard rule book. Yeah.
That's tough. That's tough. That's tough, right? But that's them comparing themselves to themselves. They can
Mhm.
still achieve success. They could be a CEO, they could be executives, they could start a charity, they could do all these different things to make the world a better place. But as long as they hold on to that rule and they're comparing themselves to their previous self, their previous accomplishments, they're never really going to feel successful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that. Well, I'm going to tie a Tony Robbins bow on it, the other extreme, but that's exactly why when you listen to one of Tony Robbins, like morning priming exercises or something, in the gratitude section, he will say, make sure it's something simple. Make sure you're grateful for the wind on your face, that you woke up, you can move your body. Like, there's very simple things that others won't get. And just like Ricardo explained, you don't need to only be grateful for these big, massive things because that makes your rule book focus on it has to be massive. It has to be grand. It has to be, well, you're not going to wake up and be grand every single day of your life. But if you don't wake up grateful, you're not going to be able to stack up to the moments where you are actually grand and you make these awesome, successful adventures happen. But it's literally daily gratitude for simple things stacked that lead you to those very grandiose, successful moments and milestones.
All
But
right, Courtney. So
okay.
now we talked about comparing yourself to previous successes. Are you
Mhm.
ready to flip it?
Yes.
This is
Hot
the
seat
tough
time.
one. This is the tough one, Courtney. Comparing your current self, where you are now in the present moment, to previous failures.
Mm. This can be
Oh,
quite empowering, although it doesn't look like it on the surface.
it does not look like it on the surface, but this is. Let me give you an example of this one. Okay, well, I need to go do this, or I need to go try something, but the last time I did that, it didn't go too well for me. The
Mm.
last 3 times I did that, I came up short. So, when I try it now, I'm not too sure.
You know what's ironic? Your brain is doing exactly what it's designed to do because your brain isn't focused on, well, focusing on this make Ricardo happy. No, no. It only has two jobs, right? It has, will this kill me? Or does this fit a pattern I've seen before? And your brain will literally delete, distort, generalize whatever it can to give yourself evidence or your ego evidence that one, it's safer to stay where you are because that one, will it kill me? Or two, does this fit a pattern I've seen before? So it will literally manipulate its own brain, your own self, to believe this fits the pattern of that crazy ex or that crazy weird boss you had. And you taught me a lot about that. And so yeah, that's what's ironic is your brain's doing exactly what it's meant to do, but it's up to you to redirect that.
And it
That's
holds you
hard.
back. It holds you back. Just comparing yourself to previous failures. Oh, man. And it's kind of like you have to look back at that failure and see what you learned from it. You have to look back at that failure and notice that now you're in a different space with different skills, with different abilities, and different capabilities. Man, I feel like Dr. Seuss there.
As you sound like him, I like
I
it.
know, right? I think I need to write a
Hey, we need
children's
a
book.
Dr. Seuss of personal development. Yeah.
So,
Next project.
next project, we'll add that to the list.
Yeah.
Carrying on. But
Yes.
just comparing yourself. You're in a different place, you're a different person, and you literally have a different mind. But the
Mhm.
only thing that's gonna create that same type of failure to that level is you harping on it and focusing on it and giving it energy. But if
Yeah.
you turn that around and focus on the success of this project or the success of doing this thing that you failed at before, you increase the likelihood of that success tenfold.
Mhm.
Or maybe you change something, you do something different, like Tony likes to talk about doing something different. Maybe you need some additional resources, some additional people, some additional mentors, some coaches, some training in order to ensure that you're more successful this go round than you were the previous one.
I didn't realize until you're listening to you that we've had some deep talks about that in focus to me lately. And just, looking back, and it wasn't until really talking to you and kind of having that, I guess, observation where I kind of step out of my own body and look at how far I've come. But there were days lately where I was going through a mentally tough time. But to be fair, if it was a few years ago and that same thing happened, I wouldn't be able to even like get up and get out of bed. Right. It
Mhm.
just would be like so paralyzed with emotion. And now those feelings were maybe still there, but I was able to get up and get after it and do what I needed to do. And the odd thing is, at the end of the day, what's going to make you feel better and flip out of that is doing something that makes yourself proud, and then stacking on that and stacking on that and stacking on that. So, that just look at how much easier you can do something that used to stress you out beyond belief, used to terrify you. And now you're just doing it. Mom's talking to you, like, y'all just handle it, great examples of humans. So, find the empowering thread, take the lesson, but dear God, take the lesson, like, because that will keep coming at you. And if you keep beating yourself up and comparing yourself, like maybe high school was your heyday, maybe you were top of your game then, like, okay, all that should really say to you now is you have the ability to get there again in a new and improved, new, polished, older, wiser version.
Yes.
So it has nothing to do with you're never going to get back there again unless you choose to believe it.
Yes. It's all about that belief system, but it's also just that awareness. Who am I comparing myself to? Am I comparing myself to that guy or that gal on social media? Or am I really just comparing myself to myself?
Hmm. Yeah.
It's powerful. I think we do it a lot more than we realize. I know that I do. Until we
Yeah.
started really talking about this and exploring this idea, I didn't realize how much time I spend comparing myself to myself.
Hmm.
I'm my greatest opponent and I'm
Yeah.
my greatest proponent. Proponent. Is
Yeah.
that the word? I think so.
No, we're gonna go with it. Yeah. What's ironic about I don't know, when we started this conversation, I necessarily had that thought where I'm like, oh, I've done a lot of good work and not bashing myself or shaming myself for things.
Yes.
However, I realized how hardcore my rule book still was. And what I mean by that is the rule book you make up in your brain, the rule book that it's not, I can't be happy until this is met, or they didn't do a good job unless they checked these boxes. It's that on our expectations episode, we talked about the rule book, like the chances your rule book will ever match anyone else's exactly is zero.
Er,
Zero. So it's just, you got to let that go. But really, the eye opening part was that my rule book's still unwritten. Now, granted, there's certain hard lines in life, there are certain things I'm not going to harm this or do this, but it's all unwritten. And here I am, literally like acting like I'm like being guided by this manual. And I am the author, literally with the pen still in my hand. And so I think it just kind of woke me up to, and kind of been spinning around in this mindset the last week that, okay, I have a thought. And does that, did I make up that rule, or did I hear that rule when I was 4 and I'm just repeating it ever since,
boom.
because that's a lot of where we get our beliefs and rules for life. And
Yes.
so in just asking yourself, like, okay, in this day and age, me at this age, me at this wisdom, at this experience, do I choose to have the same rule, or should I upgrade it? And it's just this thought process, and it will prong you to just kind of observe and analyze and observe without judgment.
Yeah.
Judgment's ego.
That's
That's
it.
tipping you to the side of the scale you don't want to be on. So you need to stay in observation, awareness. That's a better word, like you used, awareness, because that
Awareness.
involves that self-love and self-understanding. Whereas ego is, that's your lesser brain. That's just trying to keep you, it's brain.
It's
Will this
holding you
kill
back.
me?
It's
Or
holding you
yeah,
back.
does this
It's
fit a
holding you
pattern?
back.
Your ego's the king of that. So it
And you
just,
can here's the thing,
yeah.
Courtney, before you finish that thought, because I want you to go straight to another thought. You can always pick up and choose a new manual like the one that you just picked up.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So The Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer, beyond an amazing book. I personally, I don't even know how many times I've truly listened to this on Audible, because I like to listen to, I like at least once a week. I'm like 2 times or 3 times speed. I'll probably listen to it real low in the background. But this book has changed my life. And thank you for bringing it into my life, Ricardo. But there's someone else there in your brain. There's someone else there in your brain. I'm going to hand it over to you to let you kind of
That's it.
explain why you brought it to the group and what it meant to you.
That's it. We call it the trifecta. There's very few books that achieve the trifecta in my world. And what is the trifecta? That means I get it on Audible, I get it on Kindle, and then I get the physical book. Why? Because I need it in all forms in my life. I just
Hmm.
need it. Sometimes maybe I just want to go look at something. Maybe I want to read it while I want to listen. I want to hold it right here on the camera. And the Untethered Soul quickly became a group favorite
Hmm.
because it really explains things to you like a 4-year old,
Yeah.
right? It explains the mind, it explains the belief system, it explains why you feel and do the things that you do, right? But touch
Hmm.
up on a little bit on that little point that you brought. I want to hear what you have to say about it.
On which part?
The
Or
pilot.
um the wait, huh? Okay, I'm gonna let you tell us about that.
Well, no, you were
The
talking about the pilot in your mind.
oh, the yeah, basically it's just there's I call it the roommate, but yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Is just there's someone else in your brain with you. There's it's the mind, okay? It's the universal mind is kind of how Tony Robbins describes it. And but you have certain instincts and you have certain just as humans we have memory in our DNA and things that cause our brain to think a certain way
Yes.
and cause certain thoughts to come. And that's you say it a lot, Ricardo, and I love it. And you'll joke about like, well, you're the only one who ever has that thought, right, Courtney? Like you're the only one. He's being sarcastic because it's a very paralyzing or anxious or fearful thought that we all have, and so I can get woo woo on it too,
It's
but
just
that's where,
different
like, just
versions though.
like you
Let's
said,
say
like,
that. We
yeah,
all have the thought, but there's different versions of that
exactly.
same thought running in our mind.
And that's where we talk about the universal mind. It's like, what if we all shared this mind that had similar thoughts, fears, everything, and we all are kind of plugged into it. And so that's the idea. Whereas then you have your brain that you can condition, you can just really work through and how your development or undevelopment is in your own brain. But there's this universal mind that you're going to get these thoughts and you are going to have these just feelings thrown at you in a moment. And just you got to know how to center yourself and just take a breath in that awareness moment. Honestly, like that's kind of the trick. But understand when it is that roommate in your head and then when it is you talking. And you will notice your brain never stops talking, and that's not 100% you. But if you
Nope.
believe it, it's not going to lead you to the abundant, fruitful, gratitude filled life you want.
And
And so
the
it's not.
untethered soul really dives into that. Is that really you or is that somebody else? And can you hear if you hear it, is it really coming in your own voice or in another voice? And
Yeah.
it's like, wait, what?
Hmm. And once you start looking and deciphering that, it gets so much easier.
It does. But this is a great example of refining your rule book, picking up a new manual. That's a manual. All the books, all the information, all the things that we read are into and that better us. That's helping us redefine our rule book.
This is another amazing manual. It's called The Last Lecture by Randy Pausch. And yes, my camera was on top of that.
Love it, Courtney. But there's so many. They're manuals. They're rule books, and you can choose to take new rules. Pluck the rules that work. Pluck the rules that mean something to you, and throw the rest of them away. Jim
You don't
Rohn.
have to absorb an entire book or an entire workshop to get what you need out of it, guys. Like literally,
No,
the one of the best challenges you gave me, Ricardo, was when you told me just to read the first chapter of all the books. Not, I don't have to read the whole book of all these books I've sitting around that I want to get through and absorb. Just the first chapter, and that was great. It's like
you're
stop
like,
there.
hey,
I
that
achieved.
that works.
Now, we'll see when I go back and read the chapter 2 of everything. But anyway, but so just to kind of tie a bow on this point, it will feel awkward. Like it will feel different when you start actually breaking your patterns and going about it in a slightly different way. And it's I don't know. I brought it up on like one of our morning calls. We talked about this and it was, is it a hill or is it a mountain? That's the note I wrote down. And at first when you're young, you're hiking up mountains, the terrain, you can work with it. You can work with it. And then, but at some point, if you've just been going over hill, over hill, over hill, and you look back and let's say you take a picture of your progress or something, it's mountains, right? If it's hill after hill after hill, that's some mountainous terrain, right? But it's like picture if you ever have been to the mountains and you take a picture and you're like, "Oh, this is so beautiful." You can't see the vastness in that photo. You can't see what it took to get there. You can't see the details that you could see if you're standing there in person. And so it's just like understand when you're feeling like this is the end of the world, every step you've taken before that is contributing to you building something, building up your mountain. And so if you can just stay where you have faith in yourself and not give into ego, not give into resentment, not give into resenting that you aren't as good as you were 20 years ago. Like, isn't that awesome? You're not a tree. You're a human. You can move. You can evolve. You can
Yes.
change. Like, that's amazing. Like, the power is in your hand. And trust me, I've been there. It's hard to believe that when somebody's like, you have the power to change your life. Like, I've been there where I've rolled my eyes and or given them some other, type of reaction that was not appropriate. But at the same time, like, been there, done that, and just test it out with just awareness of, is this my thought and who am I comparing myself to? Like, it
Yes.
starts right there. It
And
really
am I
does.
comparing myself to my previous self? Like
Yeah.
you just said, just because that's where I was 20 years ago doesn't mean that's where I am now. And this is Kendall here made a comment and they said, yes, not all thoughts we have belong to us. Just had a quote, that thought dialogue was long and not mine. I just acknowledged it and went on my way.
Yeah.
That's
Thank you,
true.
Kendall.
I
Yeah.
will ask this. This is something that we didn't really touch on this episode that it's worth pointing out right here is what if that thought was a thought of you from 20 years ago? Maybe that thought is yours. However, what if that thought comes from you 20, 10, 5, 30 years ago?
Yeah. Or just ask yourself the question of how many years have I been repeating this question to myself?
Ooh,
Like, that's going to wake you up in some moments.
that's a big one. That's a big one. But it's
That's
all
the,
about controlling those thoughts, right?
yeah,
Controlling those thoughts and understanding that if it's your thought or a thought that you've been having for years, where did that thought come from? And this also comes into comparing yourself to
yourself.
yourself.
Yeah. I did want to, a note I did bring up here. So to recharge yourself. And okay, so a lot of us, especially high achievers, when you are sitting down and not producing results constantly, you feel lazy. And so I just want to bring up the analogy of your phone. We give our phone a break sometime every time within 24 hours, right? Because we need to charge our phone. So you're just recharging yourself. Don't think of it as being lazy. Don't think, but you have to build in the rest time. And I'm saying that because really, like in waking hours, you should be charging after your passion. If you aren't sure what it is yet, keep diving inward. Keep, the whole rest of the episode's content on that. But in order to really understand and have that a healthy awareness, you need to rest and you need to check in with yourself and you need to recharge yourself. And so make time for it, make a structure, make sure you have a system for that, but don't bash yourself and call yourself lazy because just like Ricardo said, that's a thought from years ago that's not serving you. And I mean, it's different if you're recharging 20 hours a day. Like, do something with your life, but make sure you're making time to recharge for yourself because that is you got to have that grace with yourself to allow yourself to stop and pause and take
Yes.
awareness.
Let me
And
tell you what just came up for me when you said that.
okay.
And this really ties into comparing yourself to yourself. The minute that you, what? Recharge? Rest? I don't
What's
need to
that?
rest. I could go 20 hours if I wanted to. Courtney, who are you to tell me to rest? I don't need to rest. But what is that?
That was your old pattern. That's your old thought
Yes,
pattern and loop from
yes,
20, 30 years ago
yes.
from well, let's be honest, from 3 years ago or
Or whatever, right? That's me thinking like, oh no, I know that I can go 20 hours if I wanted to. I know I could go 24, 36 hours straight and hustle it out and do what I need to do if that's how long it
you
takes.
can also jump off a cliff. You
I
have that
can.
ability, but should you?
I don't have to now. That's the thing, you know? And so in this space in my life, you are correct. Rest and recharge is important. And I have adapted that. I have adopted that philosophy because I do take naps. I do rest. I do tune out. I take off everything. I turn off all the alerts and I go lie down for 10, 20 minutes and recharge.
Mhm.
But again, the first thought is that, but that's the proof. That's the proof.
Yep.
Those thoughts are still in my head like, what?
Yeah. It's in your
Rest.
DNA. It's gonna pop up. So
It
you
is.
need a tool and a resource and a process to
And I have to bring it back
shut
down
it
and be
up.
like, Ricardo, it's okay to rest. It's okay to recharge.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Trey,
Got some good
Trey, our
yes.
buddy Trey.
Hey, hey.
Controlling your thoughts are very important because our thoughts are not nurtured. Because our thoughts are not nurtured properly, it will destroy the lives of others around you. This is a great discussion.
Thank
Man,
you for
that's a
tuning in,
whole
Trey.
separate discussion. But yes, our thoughts could definitely destroy the lives of the others around us.
Yeah. And Kendall
Definitely.
earlier, he said, so if the thought popped up in the past, he's referring to that. He said, I wouldn't have judged it. I would have just aligned or with it if it was, or if I wanted to be part of my consistent reality. So literally, if you don't pick up on that, this thought isn't you. This thought is a pattern on repeat. If you don't have that awareness in the moment, you will just assume this is your reality and go about it.
Not just is this thought not you, is this thought not the current you where you are now?
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Maybe it's the old you. And the old you could be the old you from 24 hours ago.
Yep.
It could be the old you from 5 hours ago. That's still the old you.
Yep. But if you can identify it, then it gives your brain something, a way to organize it, right? If you
Definitely.
don't identify it and don't exactly like, if you literally tell your brain, nope, this is me from yesterday, it gives your brain something to do with that thought. It says,
It
get out
really
of here.
does because
Yeah.
today is a new moment and moving forward has not been defined.
Yep.
Powerful thoughts here, Courtney. Powerful
It is.
thoughts.
I enjoyed this conversation.
This was a
Yes. Oh,
great one.
and I did want to end. So, a note I made from Jordan Peterson, always dropping that wisdom. But if you want a fair competition, compete with who you were yesterday. You are the only one who has your exact same advantages and disadvantages. So, it's only fair. I love that. So,
Hold up, hold up, hold up, hold up a
okay.
second. Every once in a while, we get these notes, right? And you drop these quotes, or I drop these quotes, and I think this is one of them that deserves a repeat. Say that again,
Okay.
Courtney.
So the wonderful Jordan Peterson said, if you want a fair competition, compete with who you were yesterday. Only you have had all of your exact same advantages and disadvantages. So it's only fair.
That's it. Thank you so much for tuning, everybody. And remember to subscribe to the audio version of the podcast by visiting forceforgrowth.com. And remember to be a force for good
A force for growth.
and a force for greatness.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
There it is.
I like all the emotions.